Hello, I'm Maurice Powell. Welcome to A Little Like Music, Manx Radio's regular Thursday evening classical music hour. I'm going to start with a piece by Sousa, the March King, the American March King. Although this isn't a march, he did write other pieces, descriptive pieces, mood pieces, as well as the famous marches. This one's an unusual one. It's called The Chariot Race. It was written in 1890, and it starts with 4 very faint offstage trumpets. Something unusual then, by Sousa. So, to begin this evening's programme, an unusual piece by the March King Sousa, The Chariot Race of 1890. It's played for us there this evening by the Wallace Collection, conducted by the trumpeter John Wallace. A very interesting piece for military band. I can't say I've ever heard it before. And now for some Mozart and a concert aria that he wrote in Vienna in 1783. Now, Mozart wrote a number of concert arias. They don't come from his own operas, so they're comparatively little known. This particular one, it's called Vorrei spiegarvi, O Dio, Let Me Explain, O God, What My Grief Is, was written for somebody else's opera. This is not unusual, certainly not in the 18th century. The opera in question was a comic opera by Fosse, a quite good contemporary of Mozart's. And when this opera was produced in Vienna, the original music didn't always fit the new singers, so they occasionally either borrowed an aria from another opera or asked a composer like Mozart to write a new one, which he did. Vorrei spiegarvi, O Dio, written for an opera by Fosse. It's really a duet for soprano and oboe, and it is sublimely beautiful, absolutely incredible. So I hope you enjoy it. Mozart's concert aria Vorrei spiegarvi o Dio, sung for us this evening by Edita Gruberova. 1783, I wonder if anybody in the audience kind of noticed that they just heard an exceptional piece of music. That's not to say that Anne Foss's music is bland or boring, but an aria like that must have stood out like a sore thumb in an otherwise, run-of-the-mill comic opera. Well, we don't know. Of course, if that aria had appeared in, say, The Marriage of Figaro, Così fan tutti or Don Giovanni, today it will be world famous, but hardly anybody knows it. And there are probably 30 or 40 other concert arias for various different voices to explore, and some of them are absolute masterpieces. I remember 20 years ago watching Cardiff Singer of the World, and a Danish soprano won it that year. She waited until all the others had howled their way through great chunks of Verdi and Puccini, and she came on and sang this piece absolutely flawlessly. Of course she won. If you sing or play Mozart flawlessly, you will always win. And the music now of this is A Fine Romance, Yehudi Menuhin and Stefan Grappelli from Kern's musical Swing Time, which from 1936, which features Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers. I'm sure I've seen it on television Saturday afternoon. I'm sure we all have. But Menuhin and Grappelli, very famous duo. Unlikely in many ways. Grappelli didn't really think that it would work. He thought that Menuhin would be too much of a stuffed shirt classical composer. But it really worked very, very well, them playing together. A fine classical musician and a fine jazz player. So Kern's A Fine Romance. The music there of Jerome Kern, a fine romance from the film Swing Time with Yehudi Menuhin and Stefan Grappelli. Great fun. And now to the music of Berlioz, and something to sit back and relax to for a few minutes. This is the Pilgrim's March from his symphony Harold in Italy. It's a symphony for orchestra, of course, but with solo viola, and it was composed in 1834. The idea and the commission for this work came from Paganini, the world-famous violin virtuoso, but who also played the viola and owned a Stradivari viola and wanted Berlioz to write something for him. But Paganini was not happy with the result because it's not a conventional virtuoso concerto, which I think is what Paganini was hoping for. There are quite long stretches where the viola really has nothing to do. I've seen this work performed a few times, and there's no doubt about it, it's awkward. The viola does have a solo role, but from within the orchestra. So how exactly, logistically, do you get round this? Usually the viola player stands at the front of the orchestra like a conventional soloist, but as I say, there are very long passages, particularly in the finale, where it has nothing to do, so it looks a bit ridiculous. So does he stand sort of in amongst the violas, or does he sit at the front, perhaps on a slightly raised platform? Well, I've never been entirely convinced about this piece. I think it's Berlioz's weakest orchestral work, but Berlioz fans would no doubt disagree. It's based on Byron's poem Childe Harold's Pilgrimage, a poem which I've never read, I have to say, but Berlioz certainly had read it and was very keen to write this piece. It's in 4 movements. It has some very exciting things. What I'm going to play is the Pilgrim's March from Harold in Italy, which does have some rather attractive viola solo writing. The Pilgrim's March from one of Berlioz's most unusual orchestral works, the symphony called Harold in Italy. And now I think we need something a bit jollier, and why not a march by Eric Coates. We haven't had Coates on the programme for a while, so it's about time. This is, let me just think, this is the ATV March, Sound and Vision. A bit confusing this, he wrote two marches for very similar occasions. He had already written Music Everywhere for Rediffusion, which of course was a new channel in the 1950s. And then he was asked to write another march for Lou Grade's ATV channel, which was Sound and Vision. So this is Sound and Vision. I'm glad we got that sorted out. It's rather confusing. Like all of Coates' marches, it's bright and breezy with a great central tune. Splendid march there by Eric Coates, Sound and Vision, one of his last pieces, incidentally, written for the ATV channel. And now to the music of Schubert, a composer who doesn't appear in this series very often. I mean, he's not specifically a light music composer, of course, but a lot of his pieces are light in texture and, of course, always immensely tuneful. One of the earliest pieces of Schubert to become popular was, of course, the music, the ballet music from Rosamunda. Now, Rosamunda was a play, Rosamunda, Princess of Cyprus. The play was written by Helmina Foncasi, and although I have to admit I've never heard a word of the play, by all accounts, and I mean all accounts, the play is awful. It was composed in 1822 and consists of 10 numbers. There are 2 ballets in the score, entr'actes as a shepherd's hymn and a hunting song, and a B minor entr'acte, a rather large, powerful piece, which some musicologists think may originally have been intended for the so-called unfinished symphony. The whole score of Rosamunda was discovered, thankfully, in 1867 by Arthur Sullivan and George Grove, who happened to be in Germany hunting through old scores. It might have simply disappeared forever. So we're going to hear the first ballet music. I don't know whether Schubert ever met Helmina Foncasi. Apparently she was an amateur lady playwright, and she took her plays around Vienna, made a bit of a nuisance of herself, trying to get people to put her plays on. Well, they did at the Theater an der Wien, as I say, in 1822, and Schubert wrote this marvellous music. So here's the ballet music number 1 from Rosamunda. part of the incidental music that Schubert wrote for the play Rosamunde, Princess of Cyprus in 1822. That was known as the Ballet Music Number 1, but all of that music is very well known. In fact, it has 2 overtures. What we now know as the Rosamunde Overture started life as an overture to one of Schubert's operas, and there was another overture as well, also from an opera, which apparently was used with this music from time to time. So a bit of a hodgepodge. Probably Schubert scribbled it together fairly quickly for this play, which I can't believe he had any real interest in. However, there we are. It's left us with some lovely, tuneful music. Talking of lovely, tuneful music, the music now of Carl Maria von Weber, best known, of course, as an opera composer, particularly for Der Freischütz, but also Oberon and Oriente. But there are many other operas as well. The piece I'm going to play is the finale from his Second Symphony, one of 2 symphonies composed in 1807, when he was sort of composer in residence for the Duke Eugen at Karlsruhe. The Duke had a private orchestra, lucky Duke, and Weber was kind of in-house composer. The 2 symphonies are given an occasional airing. They're quite charming, and they have many of the traits that we associate with Weber. Wonderful, inventive scoring. Here is the Scherzo Presto, then, the finale from Weber's Symphony No. 2. A very witty ending there with the grumbling bassoons there to the finale of Weber's Second Symphony. Well worth exploring. And now we've come to our last piece, the end of the programme almost. I hope you've enjoyed my selection. I always enjoy sitting down here in the studio with a pile of CDs in front of me, and sometimes I even have a programme mapped out in advance. I'm sure it sounds as if I just make it up as I go along. Well, maybe. what should we finish with? Something in the British light music vein. I think Gilbert Vinter, Waltzing with Sullivan. Vinter was a conductor of the BBC Concert Orchestra and the BBC Midland Light Orchestra, and he was a name familiar on the radio throughout the 40s, 50s and 60s, I guess. Waltzing with Sullivan is really a medley of all Sullivan's best tunes, all in 3/4 or waltz time. So, Waltzing with Sullivan. Please join me again next Thursday at 9. No idea at this stage what's going to be in the programme, but there will be some light music and one or two surprises. So, happy listening this week, and goodbye.